A fantastic field of young slugging superstars. We welcome you all to the Home Run Derby.
Oh my goodness, showtime!
Cause I got the drive, I put it in gear. Line them up, I don't see no competitors here. If it ain't first place, we really can't settle for it. Listen up, listen up.
A monstrous ball! See you later!
Get ready, let's go. Get ready, we running this show. Get ready, you already know. Let's go.
There you go. Shohei Ohtani has taken the MLB by storm this season. He's the first player in MLB history to be selected to the All-Star game as both a pitcher and a position player. Ohtani's bat has really been the story as he currently leads the league with 33 homers. That mark is tied with 1998 Sammy Sosa for the most home runs hit by a foreign-born player entering the All-Star break. And if he keeps this pace up, he can join Babe Ruth as the only players to lead the majors in home runs while making at least 10 pitching appearances that year. Ruth did this 102 years ago. My goodness. Stephen A. Smith, is this good for Major League Baseball that Ohtani's the top attraction?
Not to me. And I say not to me because I completely understand where other people are coming from. And I'll leave that side of the point to Max. And Max, you had the pleasure of meeting my high school buddy, Jeff Brown, this weekend in Las Vegas.
The whole family.
He's one of the biggest baseball fans I know. And he's very, very big on Ohtani. And I'll leave that to your side of the argument. And I just want to let you know I get where y'all are coming from. I'm just going to tell you where I'm coming from with this. Even though baseball is an international sport, and I totally get that, it's played in the United States and Canada. That's where Major League Baseball is being played. So when I'm looking at it from this perspective. In the United States of America, when you talk about the sport of Major League Baseball, you talk about its lack of diversity in terms of African American players. You talk about the influx of foreign players, whether they be from Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Japan, or anywhere else. If you are a star and you need an interpreter, that might have something to do, not everything, because there's a lot of things that go into it, but that might have something to do with your inability to ingratiate yourself with that young demographic to attract them to the sport. I would remind you, Max, I would remind my brother Jeff, I would remind others that baseball is in trouble. The audience for Major League Baseball, the demographic repeatedly gets older. It's not getting younger. That younger demographic, which is the targets for all of the advertisers and sponsors and everybody else out there, that's the NBA and the NFL. Major League Baseball is struggling miserably. That's why you got a lot of people that have turned against the commissioner, Rob Manfred, because of all the changes that he's tried to incorporate and implement in an effort to save the sport by elevating its level of interest, okay? And it's even alienated some of the players who are traditionalists and want things to remain the same as they always were. We all know that baseball, the sport of baseball, led by its players, are always the last to the party. Always the last to the party. They're so reluctant to change. They're always the last to the party. When I look at Ohtani, he is big time. Babe Ruth, 33 home runs, batting .279, got a 4-on-1 record with a .379 ERA as a pitcher. This brother is special. Make no mistake about it. But the fact that you got a foreign player that doesn't speak English, that needs an interpreter, believe it or not, I think contributes to harming the game to some degree when that's your box office appeal. It needs to be somebody like Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, those guys. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, that's not the case.
I mean, it could be DeGrom with the season he's having, the pitcher.
DeGrom.
Except people prefer offense. It could be Trout this year, who was having his best season early, and he might be the best player who ever lived, by the way. Mike Trout,
not American,
right?
But I get it. Right.
But then Trout got hurt. And the Angels weren't going anywhere anyway, right? Like in Trout's career, they made the playoffs one time, and he didn't even do well in those playoffs. But the point is this, Stephen A. Ohtani is doing something like, you're right about baseball, it skews too old. But what you can do in baseball is not just try to change and get more exciting, because intrinsically, baseball is not as exciting as basketball or football. Like soccer and baseball, a lot of people love them. I grew up with baseball. It's my favorite because I grew up with it. But I don't try to convince people it's the most exciting. So you know what baseball can do other than try to get more exciting? You're going to lose that competition to the NFL and the NBA. You can embrace your history. you have a longer, deeper history than those other sports on a professional level. And when something hasn't been done for over 100 years, look, Babe Ruth's the greatest player who ever lived. And people who I argue with will tell me, well, the league wasn't integrated. Fine, because the Negro leagues were actually a major league when you look at the level of their competition. Who in the Negro leagues or in Japan or in any other league around the world that's a top flight league ever dominated both sides of the ball like Babe Ruth. As a pitcher, he was the best, and as a hitter, he was the best. He had a World Series record for consecutive scoreless innings pitched before he set the home run record, right? Single season and all time. Look what Ohtani's doing. Ohtani is not only a stud, ace-level starting pitcher, many more strikeouts than innings pitched, a sub-4 ERA, and it just blew up recently. The Yankees had a good outing against him. Before that, his ERA was much lower in 13 starts. But Stephen A., he's leading the league in home runs, in triples, which is an athlete stat, right? Not just you hit the ball, but you can run the bases. He's 12 stolen bases, only 4 caught, good percentage. He can fast, he can steal bases. He's leading the league in slugging percentage. But check this out, Stephen A. Unlike Babe Ruth, who was competing against guys with day jobs and off-season jobs and little out-of-shape guys, Ohtani's competing against a worldwide competition of players at the highest level. There's a reason this has not been done in a century. This is great for baseball.
Stephen A., everyone speaks that language.
Don't talk. Let's not talk to me like I don't know my baseball, because I happen to know baseball a lot. I was raised with baseball, and I know you know yours as well, Max. And I certainly know my brother Jeff knows. So for me to disagree with y'all, I have to have a point, and I'm going to bring it up to you right now. Baseball was dying in the 90s. What saved it? It was the home run competition between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. Now, obviously, Sammy Sosa, we learned later during his testimony on Capitol Hill that suddenly he needed an interpreter. Baseball being very, very good to him. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't enough. He needed an interpreter to speak for him when he was on Capitol Hill. Certainly didn't need that when he was smacking those home runs. But Mark McGwire basically helped save baseball, because you had a dude that you could put on Wheaties boxes, all right, that could ingratiate himself with the younger generations out there and had America transfixed on the sport of Major League Baseball. What I'm saying to you is that's not the case. That's all I mean by that. I'm not taking anything away from Ohtani. I know what he's doing on the field. I know it's nothing short of spectacular. And I understand that baseball is an international sport itself in terms of participation. But when you talk about an audience gravitating to the tube or to the ballpark to actually watch you, okay, I don't think it helps that the number one face is a dude that needs an interpreter so you can understand what the hell he's saying in this country. And that's what I'm trying to say. In other sports, Max, like basketball, you notice, Dirk Nowitzki was German and Manu Ginobili and others were from other places. And guess what, Max? They spoke fluent English. You understood what they were saying when somebody was interviewing them. They didn't need an interpreter. It goes a long way. For some reason, with Major League Baseball, you got these guys that need those interpreters, and I think that compromises the ability for them to ingratiate themselves with the American public, which is what we're really talking about.
I think that's a good point. Not so much where you're from, because you bring up 98. Where
just needing an interpreter. That's what I mean.
We're in the home run race,
right?
McGwire and Sosa, but I'm a Yankees fan, as you are. Yankees won 125 games and swept the World Series that year. And when you look at that team, Bernie Williams, Puerto Rico, Mariano Rivera, Panama, El Duque breezed in from Cuba.
And they all spoke English.
And, okay, many of them. And not El Duque at first, but
not all.
My point is,
you're right,
baseball, it's not, as long as your point, and I see that it is not about Ohtani's not from here. That's the issue. If your point is he's got to learn English, I agree with that. I think the language barrier in every sport, not just baseball,
that's all I'm talking about.
Useful to learn the native tongue of the vast majority of most Americans, or certainly the language that in which that this country speaks. That would be helpful. But that's something that you can change. That's something you can learn over time. It's difficult to learn a language in a year. But that's something. But then the question: there's nothing intrinsic about Ohtani that hurts baseball. That's something that can be done. He can learn English.
Well, but the point is this, Max. If this was Bryce Harper, what would we be doing? We might be talking about baseball 5 days a week.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying.
Although
I don't know.
to be fair, we've now talked about Ohtani this season a handful of times, which is more shine than baseball would otherwise be getting. Yep.
We've talked about him twice.
Those home runs are doing plenty of talking for me. It is very difficult to learn second
Molly?
language.
You sure?
I'm sure he's trying.
You sure?
That he's trying to learn English? Yeah, I think I'm sure
No.
he
I'm
is.
saying, you sure that's enough for you, Molly? How many Angels games have you watched, Molly?
Actually, I've watched a lot because my best friend is married to a former pitcher. So CJ Wilson. So I actually went to a bunch of Angels games. Yeah, so if we're going to leave it there, sorry.
I haven't, but when Barry Bonds was
me.
smacking home runs or Mark McGwire was in, I was transfixed on the tube. You had ESPN interrupted programming to show them at the plate.
Stephen
They do that for Ohtani.
You're in Milwaukee, you're flying to Vegas. You just might not have time for Ohtani, but you'll catch up. Jeff will get you there.
With TVs where I were. I didn't watch.
We'll leave it there.
I waited for Sports Center.
Word on the street is there's a list that actually asks if Tom Brady is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL right now. Does one of our